The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. Little White Churches. Eleanor H. McGovern peers at Bailey over bifocals. So let me get this straight, she says. You want to know what? We're sitting in Eleanor's office at an Episcopal church. It's a large church, one of the oldest cathedrals in Austin, more than 100 years old, and just over a half-mile from the football stadium. But most important, it is the only church we've walked into, the final of the 6 contenders that Bailey said felt familiar to her. We're just looking for a list of weddings that were held here during the 2008 football season, Bailey says. Eleanor, who is in her early 70s and pushing 6 feet tall, looking at us, overwhelmed. It's less complicated than it sounds, I say. We actually just need a list of the weddings your pastor performed during the home games of the 2008 season. And we don't need the weddings that fell on the other days of those weekends. Just the weddings that happened to actually take place during the Longhorns' home games, that's all. Oh, during the home games from 12 years ago? Is that all? I ignore her tone and plow forward, hoping to turn her around. I actually already did the legwork, I say. I nudged the list across the table toward her. I've created a chart with the Longhorns schedule from 12 years ago. I had Jules cross-check it at the San Francisco Chronicle, using their research tools just to be sure that we didn't miss any of the games, just to make sure we checked all the boxes. There are only 8 dates in question. There are only 8 dates when a small Bailey could have been walking into the stadium with Owen, could have found herself sitting here. Eleanor stares at the list, but she doesn't make a move to pick it up. I look around the office for clues about her, clues that may help me win her over. Christmas cards and bumper stickers cover her desk. Photographs of Eleanor's family are lined up on the fireplace mantel. A large bulletin board is brimming over with photographs and notes from parishioners. The office reveals 40 years of building relationships right in this room, in this church. She knows everything about this place. We just need to know one small piece of it. I know it seems like a lot, I say, but if you take a look, you'll see we have downloaded the home game schedule from the 2008 season, and we're looking at a fewer than 10 weekends. We have them all for you, ready to go. Even if your pastor officiated 2 weddings a weekend, it'd be fewer than 20 couples. Look, Eleanor says, I'm sorry, I'm simply not authorized to give out that information. I understand that's the policy and why that's the policy, I say. But you must agree these are exceptional circumstances. Of course, it's terrible to hear that your husband is missing. It seems that you're dealing with a lot because of his absence. But that doesn't change our policy. Can you make an exception to your policy? Bailey says, her tone too harsh. We clearly aren't serial killers or anything. We could care less who these people are. I put my hand on Bailey's leg, trying to calm her. We can sit here while we read the names. I say, no printouts, addresses even have to leave this room. Eleanor looks back and forth between us, like she's torn between helping us and kicking us out. But it looks like she is leaning toward kicking us out. I can't let that happen. Not when it's possible we are onto something. If we can figure out what wedding Owen and Bailey attended, we'll understand their tie to Austin. And maybe that tie will help explain what Grady was doing on my doorstep, what Owen is doing so far away from it. I really think Bailey may have been at this church, I say. It would be very helpful to her, to both of us, to know for sure. And if you knew what we've been through this week without our father, let's just say it would be an act of kindness. I see the sympathy percolate in Eleanor's eyes and feel hopeful, certainly that my plea has put her on the side of helping. I'd like to help you, I would, but it's not something I can do, dear. If you want to leave your number, I can check with the pastor, but I just don't think that he's going to want to provide our parishioners personal details. Jesus, lady, you're not going to give us a break here? Bailey says. It's admittedly not great language for her to use. Eleanor stands up, her head dangerously close to hitting the ceiling. I'm going to need to excuse myself now, friends, she says. We have a Bible study group this evening that I need to prepare for in this conference room. So if you wouldn't mind showing yourselves out. Look, Bailey didn't mean to be rude to you, but her father is missing and we're just trying to find out why. It's putting our family under a great deal of stress. Family is everything to us, as I'm sure you can understand. I motioned toward the photographs lining the mantel above the fireplace, the Christmas shots of her children and grandchildren, and candy shots of her husband, their dogs, a farm. Several photographs of Eleanor and perhaps her favorite grandchild, sporting some crazy street hair of his own, his in a shade of green. I'm sure you'd be the first to go to great lengths for your family, I say. I can see that about you. Please just think about it for a second. If I were sitting here and you were sitting here, I'm just asking you, what would you hope I'd do? Because I tried to do it. She pauses and straightens her dress. Then, miraculously, Eleanor sits back down, pushing her bifocals higher on her nose. Let me see what I can do, she says. Bailey smiles in relief. The names can't leave this room. They won't leave your desk, I say. We'll figure out if there is someone who can help our family, that's all. Eleanor nods and pulls my list across the desk. Then she picks it up. She looks down at it in her hands as though she can't believe she's doing this. She sighs so we know she can't believe she's doing this. She turns to her computer, starting to type. Thank you, Bailey says. Thank you so much. Thank your stepmother, Eleanor says, which is when an amazing thing happens. Bailey doesn't cringe when I'm referred to that way. She doesn't thank me. She doesn't even look at me. But she doesn't cringe, which feels a little like the same thing. I don't have any time to savor it, though, because my phone starts to buzz. I look down to see a text from Carl. I'm outside your house. Can you let me in? I've been knocking. I look to Bailey, touch her hand. That's Carl, I say. I'm going to see what he wants. Bailey nods, barely acknowledging me. Her eyes focused on Eleanor. I head out into the hallway and text him that I'm calling him now. Hey, he says when he picks up. Can I come in? I've got Sarah with me. We're on a walk. I picture him standing outside our front door, Sarah and her baby Bjorn, wearing one of the enormous bows Patty loves to stick on top of her head. Carl using his walk with his daughter as an excuse with Patty, an excuse to come and talk to me without Patty knowing. We aren't home, Carl, I say. What's going on? It's really not a phone type of conversation, he says. I'd rather talk in person. I can come back later if that's better. I walk Sarah at 5:15, get her home, get her some fresh air before dinner. I'd rather hear what you have to say now, I say. He pauses, not sure what to do. I can see him considering whether to insist we do this in person later, when it will be easier for him to spin whatever he needs to spin. Because I've had no doubt since I saw the look on his face yesterday that there is something he knows, something he's afraid to say. Look, I just feel real bad about what happened when you came to the house yesterday, he says. I was caught off guard and Patty was already so pissed, but I owe you an apology. It wasn't right, especially when he pauses, like he's still trying to figure out whether to say it. Well, maybe I should back up. I mean, I don't know exactly what Owen told you, but he was really struggling at work. He was really struggling with Avid. He told you that? I say. Yeah, he didn't go into a whole lot of detail, but he said he was under a lot of pressure to get the software working. He says. He told me that much. He told me it wasn't going as smoothly as Avid had let on, but that his back was against the wall. That stops me. What do you mean his back was against the wall? He said he wouldn't just walk away, go get another job, that he had to fix what was happening. Did he say why? He said, I say, that part he didn't get into, I swear to you, and I tried to push him on it. No job is worth that kind of stress. I looked back into Eleanor's office. Eleanor still staring at her computer, barely pacing back and forth. Thanks for letting me know. Wait, there's something else. I can hear him struggle. I can hear him struggle with how to even put the words together. There's something else I need to tell you. Just say it, Carl. We didn't invest in the shop, Patty and me, he says. I think back to what Patty said to me, how she called Owen a crook, how she accused him of stealing their money. I don't understand. I needed to use that money for something else, something I couldn't tell Patty about, something to do with Cara, he says. Cara, the coworker Carl's been involved with on and off since before Sarah was born. What exactly? I say. I'd rather not get into details, but I thought you should know that, he says. I can imagine a variety of scenarios that would cost him tens of thousands of dollars. The one percolating to the surface involves another baby and another baby Bjorn, who also belongs to him, to both of them. But I'm guessing, and I don't have time to guess. I also don't particularly care. What I care about is that Owen didn't do what Patty accused him of doing. It almost feels like a kind of proof, a piece lining up to help me prove it to myself. Owen is still Owen. So even with what's going on, you're letting your wife think that Owen took the money from you, that he convinced you to invest your savings in the fraudulent company? I realize it's messed up, he says. You think? Can I at least get some points for telling the truth? He says. This is the last conversation I want to be having. I think of Patty, self-righteous Patty, telling her book club, her wine club, her tennis group, telling just about anyone in Ladies Central who will listen to her that Owen is a crook, telling everyone the false information her husband has fed her. No, Carl, the last conversation you want to be having is the one you're about to have with your wife. Because either you're going to tell her the truth or I'll do it for you. This is when I hang up, my heart racing. I don't give myself time to process the implications of what he's told me because Bailey's motioning for me to come back in. I pull myself together and walk back into Eleanor's office. Sorry about that, I say. That's quite all right, Eleanor says. I'm just pulling everything up. Bailey starts to move around the desk toward Eleanor, but Eleanor stops her with her hand. Let me just print the records out, she says, and you can have a look. But I do need to get to the meeting, so you're going to have to move quickly for me. We will, I say. But then Eleanor stops typing. She looks at the screen confused. This is the 2008 season you're asking about? She says. I nod. Yes, first home game was the first weekend in September. I see that from the document, Eleanor says. What I'm asking is, are you sure of the year? Pretty sure, I say. Why? 2008? Bailey's trying not to look irritated. 2008, yes. We're closed that fall for construction. She says it was a major renovation. There had been a fire, doors shut on September 1st, and we didn't open again for services. No ceremonies of any kind until March. No weddings. Eleanor moves the screen so we can see the calendar for ourselves. All the empty squares. My heart drops. Maybe we have the year wrong? Eleanor says to Bailey, let me check 2009 for you. I reach out my hand to stop her. There's no point in checking 2009. Owen and Bailey moved to Sausalito in 2009. I have the records of that. And in 2007, Bailey would have been too young to remember much of anything. She has no memories of Seattle during that time, let alone a sole weekend trip to Austin. We're being honest with ourselves. Even 2008 is a stretch. But if her mother was at the wedding, and Bailey thinks she may have been, then 2008 is the only time it could have been. Look, it had to be 2008, she says. Bailey's voice starts to shake as she looks at the empty screen. I was here, and that's the only time it could have been. We've gone over this. It was that fall. It would have had to have been then if my mother was with us. Maybe it was 2007, Eleanor says. I would have been too young to remember any of it then. Then it wasn't here, Eleanor says. But that doesn't make sense. Bailey says, I mean, I recognize the apps. I remember it. I move toward Bailey, but she moves away. She isn't interested in being appeased. She's interested in getting to the bottom of this. Eleanor, I say, are there any churches in walking distance of campus that look like yours? Something we may have missed that may have reminded Bailey of your church? Eleanor shakes her head. No, not with a cathedral that is reminiscent of ours, she says. Maybe a church that has since closed down? I don't think so, but why don't you leave your phone number? I can ask the pastor, some of the parishioners, and I will call if I remember anything. You have my word on that. What are you possibly going to remember? Bailey says. Why don't you just say you can't help us? Bailey, stop, I say. Stop? You're the one who said if I remember something, we need to track it down. And now you're telling me to stop? She says, whatever, I'm so freaking done with this. She stands up quickly, storming out of Eleanor's office. Eleanor and I watch her go silently. She gives a kind of look once Bailey has gone. It's fine, she says. I know it's not me that she's angry with. Actually, it may be, I say, but it's misplaced. She needs to be mad at her father, and he's not here to hear it. So she's turning it on everyone else. Understood, Eleanor says. Thank you for your time, I say. If you do think of anything, even if it feels unimportant, please call. I write down my cell number. Of course, she nods, putting the number in her pocket as I start walking to the door. Who does this to his family? She asks. I turn around and meet her eyes. Sorry, I say. Who does this to his family? She says again. The best father I've ever known, I want to say. Someone without a choice, I say. That's who does this to his family. We always have a choice, Eleanor says. We always have a choice. That's what Grady said too. What does that even mean? That there is a right thing to do and there is wrong thing to do. Simple, judgmental. And if you're the person someone is asking that question about, you have chosen wrong, as if the world is divided between the people who have never made a big mistake and the people who have. I think of Carl on the phone telling me that Owen was struggling. I think of how he must be struggling wherever he is now. I feel my own anger rising. I'll keep that in mind, I say, my tone matching Bailey's, and I head out the door to join her.